Happy Saturday, Risers. We hope you are having a phenomenal weekend. Sagar and I are back with some of our favorite moments from the week.
That's right. President Trump won Michigan by a slim margin of 0.23% of the vote in 2016. And state polls currently show Biden with a 7-point lead, but very similar to last time.
We had the opportunity to speak with filmmaker and activist Michael Moore about what the situation on the ground in his home state of Michigan was and how seriously he thinks we should take the polls. Take a listen.
I need to remind people that the poll back in July said at that point that Biden was ahead in Michigan by 16 points.
Right.
Trump has cut that in half. Trump has tightened virtually every one of these swing states to the point where are they saying this morning? It's 5 points ahead. Biden's 5 points ahead in Wisconsin. He's maybe 3 to 5 points ahead in Florida, 2 points ahead in Arizona. Listen, don't believe these polls, first of all. And second of all, the Trump vote is always being undercounted. So it is not an accurate count. I think the safe thing to do, this is not scientific, I'm just saying from my experience of being a Michigander, whatever they're saying the Biden lead is, cut it in half right now in your head. Cut it in half. And now you're within the 4-point margin of error.
So look, polls give Joe Biden significant advantage in Michigan, Wisconsin in particular. I think that probably is the Trump campaign seems even to think that Biden's probably going to win those 2 states. However, the one guy who was right about those states the last time around on the Democratic side was Michael Moore, so we always love to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, always got to hear him out. All right, COVID has been devastating to the United States in a lot of different ways. The health of our citizens, the failing economy, loss of trust in the effectiveness of government. One aspect of that pandemic that we touched on this week was the mental health crisis and specifically drug use.
Author of Dope Sick, Beth Macy, joined us to discuss the charges brought against Perdue Pharma for their role in the opioid epidemic and to explain how those struggling with drug addiction are handling the stress of a pandemic.
So in July, they released overdoses were up by 13% nationally. Now, in a lot of the distressed communities that I cover, I'm hearing reports of overdoses being up 40%. And especially folks, when their unemployment runs out, they're losing access, some of them, to their medication-assisted treatment, which helps staves off opioid cravings and reduces the likelihood of overdose death. Now, one good thing that came out pretty early on was that SAMHSA and the DEA have made telehealth available for people in the MAT programs on buprenorphine so that you can be induced and you could do your regular wake-up checkups via the phone or the internet. And one doctor I was talking to last night, he's a long-term source of mine, and he runs several clinics, and he was so excited about it at the beginning because he said, Beth, we should have been doing this for years. But now he's seeing, because he can see them, right? It's telehealth. He's seeing that where they were once in their house, now they're in their car. They're living out of their cars. They've lost their unemployment.
Such an important reminder that all of these things that are happening across the country are so interconnected. So when you have this mass pandemic and then you have job loss, you have people who are already struggling with addiction and on the road to recovery, and you send them, they lose their home, now they're living in their cars, their kids trying to do their freaking homework in the backseat. I mean, so much pain out there. And I have to tell you, Beth is someone I've been following and talking to for years now. She's an incredible journalist. She lives in southwestern Virginia, so she's really deeply in touch with this issue. Dope Sick is an essential book. And she talks about how this will be, without a doubt, the worst year for overdoses in American history, and it's an issue that does not get nearly enough attention still.
No, of course. I mean, it was such an important interview. She was talking about 30% spikes in overdoses and more, and fentanyl being used with methamphetamine and with other drugs across the country, which remain dirt cheap. It's just a crisis which Trump talked a lot about in 2016 and really doesn't anymore. It's something, if you remember his win in New Hampshire was very predicated on talking about issues like this. New Hampshire was something that they wanted to win in 2020, and he hasn't talked about it once, and I think one of the reasons will be stuff like this.
In 2016, pollsters often underrepresented the rural Trump vote, especially the ones who voted for President Obama and then switched to Trump to better understand these voters. People's Action has been doing what they call deep canvassing in rural America.
Director of People's Action, George Goehl, he told us what that media gets wrong about these voters. Let's take a listen.
One thing people don't realize, President Obama won 43% of the rural vote. Secretary Clinton won just over 30%. And if Democrats want to win statewide elections or federal elections, they don't have to win rural, but they can't get trounced. And they got trounced in 2016. So I think if you see movement among rural voters in this election, I think we'll go a long way. I will say what we hear from a lot of rural folks is that they see corporations that control government, corporations that are polluting their community, corporations that don't want to deliver health care as a major cause of their problems. And I think if you look back at the last 30 years, if Democratic Party leadership would have been more clear in naming who the villain was, there wouldn't have been such a big opening for the right wing to come in and say the villain is people of color, immigrants, Muslims. And so we just got to be better at actually being really straightforward. Somebody is responsible for the crisis we're facing, and it's certainly not people of color, immigrants, Muslims. It's big corporations that have taken control of our government and really don't care about everyday people.
George is obviously a progressive. He's organizing for Joe Biden, trying to persuade people to progressive values. But his insights on rural voters, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, were so valuable because he actually sees them and treats them and interacts with them like real living human beings with a complex set of views. But the bottom line that he talks about is when you show up day one, 80% of rural voters say that the biggest problem in the country is corporate control over our government. How do we not have a single party that's really talking about that or planning to do anything about it?
Well, and they don't care. They're invisibilized. And George is somebody, obviously a deeply empathetic individual who goes and he can actually speak with people without contempt. One of the other key insights he made was that when the media paints rural voters as racist, he's like, when I go out there and trying to change minds, I have to start off from a deficit.
Right.
From these urban Democrats who are out there saying all Trump voters are racist. He's like, they are basically hardening them in their position and making my job so much harder.
Yeah, he had this quote. He was like, people will be like, well, look, I support some of these values of the Democratic Party, but I'm not sure they want me on the team.
That's right.
Because that's the message of contempt and condescension oftentimes that they're receiving. All right, that does it for us. We're going to be back later today with the week that was in media screw-ups.
Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our videos. Don't forget to like and share as well. And tomorrow, going to be back for another round of #RisingQs. We'll see you guys then.